All right, today we're diving into a really fascinating concept from a new white paper. It's called the Aegis Protocol. And look, this is a pretty radical proposal for how military operations could be run, basically replacing old-fashioned human trust with cold, hard cryptographic certainty. So let's get right into it.
So let me just ask you this. Imagine you're a commander out in the field. An order comes through, but how do you know it's actually from your general? I mean, what if it's an enemy AI that sounds exactly like him? That's the central question Aegis is built to answer. Because this isn't science fiction anymore. The reality of modern war is this landscape of digital deception. You've got AI cloned voices, hacked satellite feeds. The enemy isn't just a physical threat. They're in your network, trying to create digital ghosts to turn your entire command structure against you. And all of this leads to the core problem, what we can call the fog of digital war. Our traditional way of doing things, that centralized command and control system, has basically become a massive, single point of failure just waiting to be exploited. This really lays out the fundamental shift. We're talking about moving from a system based entirely on trust, just, hoping that the person on the radio is who they say they are, to one based on undeniable cryptographic proof. So instead of one vulnerable central hub, you create this resilient swarm where every single unit is helping to validate the whole network. Okay, so what's the actual solution here? Well, the paper calls it a cryptographic truth layer, and it's a pretty bold idea. It's a system designed from the ground up to make deception and false orders, well, mathematically impossible. To put it simply, the Aegis Protocol creates this secure, shared ledger, kind of like a blockchain, that runs on the battlefield itself. Every single asset, and I mean everything, from a soldier's wearable device to a tank, becomes its own little mini computer, a validator node that is constantly working to verify the state of the entire network. But wait, how does a network of tanks and soldiers actually create a truth layer? This is where the whole concept gets really, really innovative. The protocol literally builds a real-time token economy that's based on actual military readiness and resources. It all kicks off with just a single number. The protocol suggests there should be one single overarching index to measure the health of the entire force, and it has to be in real time. And this is it, the Strength Index, or STR token. Now, this isn't just some vague estimate. It is a live, cryptographically proven number that represents the total operational readiness of the military. If this number suddenly drops, the whole system knows something is very wrong, instantly. Okay, so beneath that one big index, you've got these 4 pillar tokens. The easiest way to think of these is as tokens of authority. So for example, if you hold the Dom_Air token, that grants you the cryptographic right to command air assets. You can't just say you're in charge, you have to physically possess the token that proves it. And then, supporting those pillars of authority are 7 sector tokens. Now, these are the tokens of reality. They represent tangible, real-world stuff. So, a fuel truck automatically mints or creates log tokens when it's full. A medic station mints MED tokens based on its supply levels. This is how the real, physical world gets written onto the digital ledger. It's brilliant. So we have tokens for authority, and we have tokens for reality. The big question is, how do they connect? And that happens through the protocol's most important mechanism, the burn-to-operate rule. Let's just walk through a quick scenario. Say you have an air wing commander, and she wants to launch a mission. In the old system, right, she'd just give the order. But with Aegis, she has to prove she has the resources to actually back it up. So here's how that works. To activate her AIR Pillar Authority token, her command node first has to find and burn, which basically just means consume, all the required sector tokens for that mission. It needs log tokens for fuel, int for the targeting data, OPS tokens to prove the pilots are actually rested and ready. And here's the kicker. If those resource tokens don't exist somewhere on the network, the order simply cannot be signed. It fails verification, period. And this quote from the paper just perfectly sums up the core security principle. You cannot order a mission you don't have the fuel for. You can't command a combat unit that doesn't actually exist. An enemy can't fake an order because they can't just magically create the resource tokens that are needed to validate it. It's just not possible. Okay, but what about faking the assets themselves? What stops an enemy from hacking a drone's signal and pretending it's a friendly unit? Well, that's where something called proof of secure presence comes into play. The old way is all about trusting a single radio signal, which, let's be honest, is pretty easy to spoof. Aegis demands multi-layered proof. It's not enough to just say you're a friendly tank. Your hardware, your operator, and other nearby assets all have to prove it through several different channels all at once. So these are the layers of proof we're talking about. You got the physical layer, which means a nearby drone can visually or electronically confirm a tank's identity. Then there's the biometric layer, where a soldier's own vital signs, their heartbeat, their gait, help secure their device. And this is crucial, an anti-tamper layer. If a piece of hardware is captured, it instantly burns all its tokens and bricks itself, cutting it off from the network for good. Now, this is a really powerful concept, but how would you actually bring it to life? How do you get from a white paper to a battlefield? Well, the authors lay out a pretty careful phase deployment roadmap.
You can see the proposed rollout is very gradual, very cautious. It would start small, just testing that main strength index in simulations and wargames. Then, Phase 2 would move to a real-world logistics unit, tracking actual tokens for things like fuel and ammo. And only after a successful live-fire test would the system even be considered for full deployment across all military domains.
Ultimately, the goal is exactly what this quote describes. It's all about taking the abstract idea of a chain of command and turning it into a verifiable mathematical fact. Your rank and your orders are only as real as the cryptographic proof that backs them up. And that really leaves us with a final and pretty provocative question, doesn't it? What happens to warfare when it's governed not by human trust, but by pure math? What are all the implications, strategic, ethical, philosophical, of a battlefield where the ultimate arbiter of truth isn't a person, but an algorithm? That's a profound shift to think about.